Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Like and subscribe to support me. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Storm Mercenary Group, a few powerhouses were holding an emergency meeting. The sudden movement of the newbie mercenary group in the west of the city made them extremely nervous. A man seemed to be extremely disdainful of the tense atmosphere and said,
"There's no news from the Demon Plains. I think the matter of the rookie mercenary group in the west of the city is just a trick to confuse us and make us panic. If young Emperor Hao Yan has really broken through to the rank of a martial supreme, why would they need to do this? They could have just charged over. Wu Wei is right, but we have to be careful. Could the matter of the city's west be seen as a signal? Before this, no matter how much we take an inch and ask for a yard, the rookie mercenary group can only passively defend and continuously shrink their range of activity. However, ever since the Highland merchant house returned to the city, they became arrogant and killed our experts. Yi Xian's whereabouts were unknown, and Zhao Yu had been captured. Now, we're even holding a heroes' assembly. It seems like we've suddenly gained a lot of confidence,"
an old man said with a deep voice. His face flickered with a dark light and his eyes were slightly turbid. He swept his gaze across everyone's faces and said,
"If it's just a diversion, it won't take long to see through it. I'm just afraid that they've really found a trump card that can fight us without Li Yunxiao Huang."
The other man didn't seem to agree with the old man's words and said,
If there really is such a thing. You wouldn't have been so timid all this time. Unless Highland brought back something. But as far as I know, they're already very lucky to be able to return to the Light Song Forest. In the Demon Plains, he was ambushed by Skeleton and his men several times."
Wu Wei revealed a look of dissatisfaction and snorted.
Shen Feng and the others have sent people to befriend them several times. Together, they're against the rookie mercenary group, but they don't even give us face. After we exterminate the rookie group, they will be next,"
the old man said.
"Don't underestimate Shen Feng. I think he's even more dangerous than young Emperor Hao Yan. Moreover, the skeleton mercenary group's origin was a bit mysterious. They had been investigating for so many years, but they still couldn't find out anything. I think we need to change our plan a little, from taking the initiative to provoke them to observe them,"
Wu Wei said disdainfully.
"Zhang Feng, you're being too careful." The regiment commander had already brought the three elders to the Demon Plains to track down Xiaohuang Haolian. The chances of him returning were slim, let alone advancing to a martial supreme. In my opinion, we should take advantage of this matter to annihilate the rookie mercenary group in one fell swoop and take over their territory. Then, when the leader returns, we'll attack the skeleton mercenaries and unify the forest."
Zhang Feng frowned and shook his head.
"You're too young, Wu Wei. If it was that simple, the forest wouldn't have been in so much chaos for so many years. Caution is the parent of safety, you must not act rashly."
The other old man nodded.
"That's right, I agree with Zhang Feng. Moreover, everyone in the west of the city had set a rule that no force was allowed to send martial honors and above into the city. In terms of strength, the newbie mercenary group has the advantage."
Wu Wei stood up in dissatisfaction and said angrily,
Since you've decided to be cowards, why are you still opening your mouths?"
He patted his butt, ignored the crowd, and left the venue. The rest of the people were frowning, clearly thinking far ahead. This time, young Emperor Hao Lian's sudden disappearance after breaking through to the martial supreme realm had brought too many variables to the future of the entire Light Song woodland. Perhaps it was a great opportunity to completely reshuffle the cards. However, no one had the confidence and assurance to be able to have the last laugh. Yunxiao called over the members of the 8th team and asked them about the situation of the Fire Dragon Vein. He soon found the entrance. There was a huge barrier below the gourd. There was a huge formation inside the barrier that was used to gather yang qi and continuously transport it above. Li Yu explained.
This formation was set up by a formation master that Commander Hao Lian had spent a lot of money to hire. The fire dragon vein is also sealed below along with this formation. If the captain wants to go down, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult.
He stole a glance at Yunxiao and muttered in his heart. He couldn't understand how such a young man could be promoted to a brigade leader. The 8 company leaders of the rookie mercenary group were all martial monarch powerhouses. A few of them were even at the peak of the martial emperor realm and could step into the martial honored realm at any time. All the brothers in the group were convinced. The sudden appearance of a young man at the rank of a martial king caused a lot of people to gossip in private. Besides, he was extremely unhappy to be called here by Yunxiao. However, Captain Zhou Xiang had ordered that he had to obey 100% of the captain's orders, so he reluctantly followed. Li Yu continued.
After the formation was set up, Commander Hao Lian personally went down to test its power. He returned without success.
His meaning was obvious. Even Commander Hao Lian found it difficult to break it, so don't even think about it. Just take a look and leave. Yunxiao turned a deaf ear to his words and just began to study it carefully. It stretched out to a radius of 100 meters, and the lines were extremely grand. The positive yang qi below was being continuously absorbed, condensing into a huge force that rushed to the ground.
Back then, I told him to study formations properly, but he refused. Now, you have to pay a lot of money to hire people to set up a simple energy returning formation. You're such a disgrace to me.
As soon as Yunxiao stepped into the array, a red beam of light shot toward him. He snorted and a golden light flashed in his hand. He grabbed the red light and immediately annihilated it in his hand. Then he took another step. Buzz. Suddenly, a buzzing sound came from the space and the lines of the entire array began to light up. Rays of red light shot up and illuminated the entire barrier. Suddenly, white lights emerged from Yunxiao's body, as if night pearls were covering his body. They penetrated through his body and condensed into a white barrier around him, blocking the red light. He performed an incantation gesture and a golden tadpole-like character flew out. It flickered above the formation and fell down. As soon as the formation came into contact with the golden tadpole-like characters, the buzzing sound immediately died down, and most of the red light disappeared. Yunxiao also retracted the white light around him and began to cast incantation gestures to dissolve the power of the array. Under the constant bombardment of the spiritual arts, the dazzling array began to become dim and unstable. The light became weaker and weaker, as if it would be extinguished at any time. Li Yu's mouth was wide open, and her eyes were almost popping out. Not only did this dazzling light origins returning grand formation absorb yang qi, it also had extremely strong defensive power. The members of the 8th team would often come here to test their cultivation after eating. He wanted to use the power of the formation to attack him and see how long it could last. Even as a 3-stars martial grandmaster, he could only last for a dozen breaths inside. Now, not only had Yunxiao blocked all the attacks, but he had also neutralized them one by one. Judging from the situation, the array seemed to be about to stop operating.
Captain, you can't.
Li Yu was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly stopped him and said,
This great formation is the foundation of Team 8. The reason we're in the west of the city is also because of this formation. If it was broken, it would affect the refining and cultivation of every alchemist master. The consequences will be unimaginable.
Yunxiao gave him an indifferent look and said,
I'm only temporarily undoing it, it's not like I'm going to destroy it.
To be able to temporarily remove the Kasaya, could he be an array master? Li Yu thought to himself, but his face was still very nervous, for fear of causing a big disaster. As Yunxiao's last incantation gesture was cast, the entire array finally stopped operating. Yunxiao walked up and down above, frowning and mumbling to himself.
There's actually another layer below that seals off my divine sense. This is really interesting. He took out the purple Shadow Qing Suo sword and used it as a rod, knocking it against the ground.
Brat, you're being too disrespectful.
The demonic dragon let out a series of roars, and demonic qi was constantly emitted from the sword. The dragon shadow flickered, showing its extreme dissatisfaction. Li Yu, who was standing next to Yunxiao, let out a cry of horror as he stared at the sword in Yunxiao's hand with fear in his eyes. The weapon essence and demonic power had shocked him, and the power that penetrated his soul had drained his blood and filled him with fear. Yunxiao smiled. "There's nothing for you to do here. You can go back first. I might have to stay here for a while." Li Yu scrambled out. He didn't want to stay in there for a moment longer. The pressure that the sword gave him was too great. It was as if he would be cut into pieces if he took a look at it.
This formation has completely sealed off the earth vein, not leaving a single entrance. Looks like we'll have to dig it up.
Yunxiao knocked on several possible places, but he found no sign, which surprised him.
Hey, kid, you can't be forgiven.
The demonic dragon roared non-stop again, as if its dignity had been greatly insulted. Yunxiao used the sword as a tool and began to dig the ground. He ignored the demonic dragon's roars and dug a big hole. Suddenly, he slapped his palm and a large piece of soil collapsed. There was a tunnel below. A large amount of yang qi rushed up from the tunnel, making people feel a burst of heat. He jumped into it and began to explore. The tunnel was very rough, and the four walls were dry. It was obvious that it had been abandoned for a long time. However, the yang qi was extremely abundant. It flowed through the tunnel as if true qi was flowing through his meridians. Yunxiao walked in the direction where the yang qi came from. It was very uncomfortable, because he was only half as tall as a man, so he had to bend down and walk slowly. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they finally arrived at a large, spacious cave. However, the problem also came with it. There were 3 forks in the road, and yang qi gushed out from each of them, as if they were all sources.
What's going on here?
Yunxiao spread out his divine sense, but it was blocked only a few meters away. He began to look around the small cave. Other than being a little bigger, it was no different from the tunnel. It was still very rough. There were also many broken stones scattered on the ground. He picked up a piece and crushed it into red powder. A wave of pure energy spread out.